Hello guys, Crypto here again, back for some new horror scary stories. Please consider to subscribe guys and leave a like to the videos, it means a lot. Story 1. Humans can lick too. This is a frightening story of a girl who was alone at home one night. For the first time, she has a dog to keep her company. The girl listened on the news about a serial killer on the loose. She goes to sleep after locking all the doors and windows but for one, which doesn't close. Suddenly she is awakened by a dripping sound. Scared, thoroughly, she tries to go back to sleep and puts her hand down the bed for a reassuring lick from her dog. As the dripping sound continues, she goes to check on the taps in the kitchen, bathroom, and everywhere else but finds nothing. She returns to her bedroom and puts the hand down again for the dog to lick. The dripping sound continues and the girl is too frightened to fall asleep. But as her hand gets licked from under the bed, she slowly falls asleep. In the morning, when she opens the closet, she finds her dog killed and hanged upside down. The dripping sound was from the dog's blood. On the closet doors, she sees a message: "Human can lick too." Story number 2. Aren't you glad you didn't turn on the lights? Two best friends, Meg and Samantha, lived in the same room of the college dormitory. Samantha goes out for a party with her date, while Meg stays back to study for the upcoming midterms exams. When Samantha returns from the party, the lights are all turned off. She does not switch on the lights as her friend is asleep. Early in the morning, Sam tries to wake Meg up to discuss the exams. As Meg doesn't respond, Sam hesitantly uncovers her face to wake her up. She gets horrified to discover Meg's face turned black and blue, and falls on the floor in a state of shock. She observed that Meg's study table was all messed up and finds a creepy note on the wall. "Aren't you glad you didn't turn on the lights?" The murderer must have very much been in the room when Sam came the previous night. Story number 3. Spiders in the hairdo. This spine-chilling tale is about Dolores, a teenage girl who is living on her own for the first time after graduation. She does not have enough money, but makes sure to save some bucks to maintain her giant beehive hairdo. She does everything to maintain the hairdo, as instructed by the hairstylist, but one day she wakes up with a terrible itch in the scalp. Dolores tries some cures but realizes that a spider bite is causing the itch, so she calls an exterminator to kill all the spiders and insects in her room. But her pain does not reduce and visits a doctor. The medication given by the doctor fails. Frustrated, she rushes to her stylist. The salon is full and the hairstylist asks Dolores to wait. She pushes a lady out of the saloon chair and asks for immediate attention. When the stylist begins to unwrap the beehive hairdo, black widow spiders start crawling down her face, and soon the saloon is filled with spiders moving slowly in every corner. Everyone in the saloon starts rushing out while Dolores is dead in her chair. The stylist is horrified to see the beehive hairdo fall to the floor and tiny black widow spiders coming out of the hatch eggs in the scalp of Dolores. It was a macabre scene, as the scalp of Dolores was half eaten by the black widow spiders. Story number 4. The Vanishing Hitchhiker. This next eerie story is about a man driving home late in the night when he spots a girl asking for a hitchhike. The pretty girl is dressed in a beautiful white dress. The man offers her a ride and they strike up an interesting conversation. He drops the girl at her home. The next day, while driving to work, he noticed that the girl by accident has forgotten her sweater in his car. He drives toward her home to hand over the sweater. An old lady opens the door when he rings the bell. He narrates the incident which occurred last night and gives the sweater to the lady. The lady refuses to accept it, saying he is mistaken. The man is surprised and questions the lady again. He is dumbstruck and left in an unsettling situation when the lady says her daughter died in a car accident a couple of years ago. Story number 5. Far, far away. In a faraway village called Never Better lived a boy, Jeremy Johnson. Since his childhood he is haunted by a ghost and he becomes friends with it. But Jeremy is ridiculed by people as they assume that he is talking to himself. Jeremy's life changes when he meets Ginger, a beautiful girl, and they grow close to each other. She invites him to play a prank on the town baker, and their bond is strengthened when the prank succeeds. The two children set out on an adventure to save the bookstore of Jeremy's family. While saving the bookstore, Ginger and Jeremy unfold the mystery of disappearing children in the village with the help of the ghost. Would Ginger and Jeremy go missing too? Story number 6. Lover's Lane. A teenage couple is in a deserted lover's lane making out in their car. After a short while, the radio stops to announce alarming news that a convicted serial killer just escaped from the asylum. People are asked to report to the police if they see a strange-looking man with a hook on the hand. The girl is frightened and requests the boy to rush home immediately. The boy initially disagrees and tries hard to convince his date to stay, but eventually they both head back. When they arrive at the girl's house, she gets down and tries to close the car door, but it won't close. She freezes as she sees a hook suspended from the doorknob. Story number 7. The Cats of Ultar. An old couple in the town of Ultar finds pleasure in mercilessly killing any cats that enter their property. The other residents of this town do not speak up against the evil act, but try to keep their felonies away from the couple's property. One night, some travelers pass through this town, and among them is an orphaned boy who has nobody but only a kitten. The kitten goes missing after a couple of days, and he comes to know about the old couple. The little boy focuses all his energy and unleashes a prayer which affects the sky and the movement of clouds. The travelers leave Ultar, and the people notice that all their cats have gone missing. People are worried, but have no clue about the whereabouts of their cats. The cats return on the following day and seem well fed, but the old couple has vanished. When the people explore the property, they find the ghastly skeleton of 2 humans which have been picked clean. Story number 8. The Monkey's Paw. Sergeant Major Morris introduces a mummified monkey paw to Mr. and Mrs. White. He tells them that he found it while serving in India. The paw has the ability to grant free wishes, but they always come with terrible consequences. Mr. White ignores Morris' warnings and asks the paw a wish for £200. Next day he received the news that his son Herbert died in an accident at his workplace. The employer sends £200 as a compensation for the family of the accident victim. Mrs. White is anxious and wants her son back. After nearly 10 days of the funeral, the couple decide to ask for another wish. They rub the monkey's paw and ask for his son to come back. They hear a knock on the door. The knock turns into banging and Mrs. White fumbles to open the door. Terrified with the idea of seeing a mutilated and decomposed body of their son outside his house, Mr. White makes the third and final wish. The door knocks stop, and when Mrs. White opens the door, she is shattered in pain and disappointment as there is nobody there. Story number 9. Children of the Corn. A quarrelsome couple is driving towards California to find a better paying job for birds. The husband, while driving, they accidentally run over a boy who appeared out of nowhere. They blame each other for the accident and finally decide to check the body. While examining the body, a shiver runs down their body as they discover that his throat was slit already and was bleeding to death. On further investigation, Vicky, the wife, finds a strange crucifix made of corn husks in the boy's bag. The couple argues over where to take the body and decided to drive towards Gatlin, which is just down the road. Gatlin is an isolated community in an abandoned ghost village. They drive further into the ghostly place and see that the calendar and gas prices are all outdated. Bert stops the vehicle at a church to go and find someone. Vicky starts to scream for help when she sees many children dressed in Amish clothing heading towards the car. The children pull Vicky out of the car and start beating her mercilessly. When Bert intervenes, Vicky escapes and goes missing. The sun sets and the ghostly place turns very dark. Bert goes and hides in a cornfield. As the daylight breaks, he sees Vicky tied to a cross with barbed wires and her eyes ripped out. There are no animals or weeds in the cornfield and nobody to take care of the cornfields. But the cornfield is still blooming. Children of the Corn find Bert, and a giant red-eyed monster emerges from the field, ruthlessly kills Bert. The children belongs to a cult that worship he who walks behind the rose, the monster who killed Bert. Story number 10. The Black Cat. The narrator and his wife live in a house with their pet cat named Pluto. The couple is very fond of the large black cat, and Pluto too loves the narrator. Their close friendship lasts many years until one day when the narrator hangs the cat under the influence of alcohol. Soon after the cat's death, their house catches fire and everything is destroyed, but one wall, which survives the mysterious fire, has an imprint of the large cat tied upside down with a rope. Disturbed on seeing this, the narrator regrets his actions. One fine evening, he finds a similar cat in a bar and brings that home. The new cat is very similar to Pluto, except for minor differences. Whenever the man sees the new cat, he is reminded of Pluto and is filled with a feeling of guilt. One day when the man and his wife are walking towards the cellar, the cat gets under the feet of his master and it trips down the stairs. In a fit of rage, he tries to kill the new cat too, but the wife stops him and in this process gets killed accidentally. He hides the body inside a wall in the house, and when the police investigation begins, he takes careful steps. On the day of closing the murder mystery, the police hear a disturbing, loud crying sound from one of the walls. The police start breaking down the walls of that room and discover the rotting body of the dead wife. Besides the dead body is a cat grinding and meowing vehemently. Story number 11. The Vampire. Aubrey, an English gentleman, meets a mysterious man named Lord Ruthven. Aubrey goes to room with Ruthven, but when he finds Ruthven doing wrongful acts with the daughter of a mutual acquaintance, he leaves him. Aubrey is attracted to Lante, a pretty woman he meets in Greece. Lante shares stories about the legend of the blood-curdling vampires. Ruthven hears them talking, and a couple of days later, Lante is found dead. Apparently, she is killed by a vampire. Aubrey continues traveling with Ruthven. On the journey they are attacked by bandits and Ruthven is gravely wounded. Ruthven takes a promise from Aubrey before dying that he will not mention about his death to anyone for 1 year and a day. One day, Aubrey suddenly realizes that everyone who met Ruthven suffered horribly. He is in London now and is shocked to see Ruthven alive and healthy. Ruthven starts seeing Aubrey's sister and proposes her for marriage. Aubrey wants to warn his sister about Ruthven, but Ruthven reminds him of the oath. Aubrey is bound by the oath and he has a nervous breakdown. Still he writes a letter to his sister, but she gets married to Ruthven before the letter arrives. On the night of the wedding, Aubrey's sister is discovered dead, fully drained of her blood. Ruthven has fled. Story number 12. A room in the tower. A young man repeatedly gets a nightmare that he is visiting a friend's house, whose family is weird. The malevolent mother of his friend, Mrs. Stone, allots a dreadful room in a huge tower for him to retire. His nightmare repeats but keeps varying every night, and the characters in the dream keep growing over the years. In his dream one day, Mrs. Stone expires and she is buried, but she still keeps assigning the same room to him. In the young man's normal life, his friend Clinton invites him for dinner one day. He is surprised to see that everything matches with the nightmare, but their personalities and names are different, and he has an enjoyable experience. Due to a thunderstorm warning, Clinton's mother advised him to stay with the family that night and allots a room that is similar to the one he sees in his nightmares. He is shocked at the resemblance. In the room he finds a very old painting of Mrs. Stone. With the help of Clinton, he moved the painting to the hall. They are amazed to see their hands covered in blood, even though neither of them is injured. They go to bed, but the young man is unable to fall asleep and wakes up in horror to find Mrs. Stone standing on the top of his bed. She tells him that she is a vampire and is here to turn the young man also into a vampire. They get into a fight and he manages to escape. When he rushes out of the room, Clinton comes out hearing the commotion. They discover that the portrait is back on the wall in his room. They get scared and flee away. An old newspaper carries the news that Mrs. Stone's coffin keeps erupting every day and has to be reburied. Story number 13. The Boarded Window. Murloc, a villager, returns from the forest and finds his wife having severe fits, which eventually causes her death. He could not save her and sits alone with his dead wife. Tired and exhausted, Murloc falls asleep. From an open window in his cabin comes a loud weeping sound which is similar to the crying of a lost child in the deep woods. Murloc doesn't move. The sound starts again and gets louder and louder. When Murloc wakes up, he feels some strange presence in his cabin. There is some weird movement in the dark. Murloc fires his rifle in the air and lights a candle. He witnesses a panther hauling his wife by the neck. When he examines the dead body of his wife, Murloc notices the earlobe of the panther stuck between her teeth. Story number 14. The Monkey. Two young brothers, Peter and Dennis, find a clapping monkey toy in the basement of their great uncle's home. In the past, their father Hal had originally found the monkey in his father's cupboard when he was a child. Hal's father disappeared under strange circumstances, and a weird connection between the monkey and the missing father is established. It is revealed that the monkey is cursed, and whenever it claps, someone from Hal's family dies. As a child, Hal saw his relatives dying one after the other whenever the monkey clapped. Oppressed by the monkey's devilish enchantments, Hal threw the clapping monkey into a deep well, which now resurfaced with his children. When Peter and Dennis find the monkey again, Hal shoves it deep down inside a lake. He hopes the problem is solved forever. A couple of days later, a new headline mentions about the mysterious death of all the fishes in the lake. Story number 15. The Landlady. A young man, Billy Weaver, is traveling in a cold winter night and seeks a place to stay. After searching a lot, he comes across a boarding house. He rings the bell and an old lady welcomes him in. He signs the guest book and gives all the required details. While filling up the guest book, he reads the names and details of the other guests who previously stayed there and find their name quite familiar. The old lady offers some food and drinks to Billy, but he refuses as he is tired and wants to go to bed. However, they have a conversation over some tea. Billy noticed some peculiar things about the living room. The parrot is sitting quietly in the cage, and a dog is laying near the fireplace. While talking, Billy asks about the other guest, and the lady starts saying strange things. She says that one of her guests, Mr. Mulholland, had nice, soft skin. The situation gets ominous. Billy asks if the parrot is alive. The lady says neither the parrot nor the dog is alive. He panics and wants to get out immediately. He realized that the names that appears familiar were the names given in the newspaper about people who mysteriously disappeared. Finally, Billy asks if there have been any other guests in the last 3 years at the boarding house. The lady says none but him. Story number 16. The Graveyard Challenge. A group of teenage girls spends a sleepover at the house of one of the girls whose parents were out for the night. The girls start talking about a ghost in the nearby cemetery. One of them says that a man was recently buried alive and that people can hear him trying to break out of the coffin at night. Another girl expresses disbelief at the urban legend and rubbishes it as a fake story. They challenge her to prove her point, so she dares to go to the cemetery and promises to return after driving a stake into the soil above the dead man's coffin. She leaves immediately, while her friends wait for her return. When she doesn't return until morning, they visit the cemetery to find her. In the cemetery, they see her lying dead next to a grave with a stake driven into her heart. Examining the stake, they noticed "Challenge accepted" written on it. Hey guys, Crypto here again. If you liked the video, please consider to subscribe and leave a like. And the most important thing, guys, stay safe out there.